You might have heard about the evolution of aviation during World War II. So what drove the frantic and innovative designs that emerged from Germany in the latter stages of the conflict? As the pressures from Allied forces intensified, how did this urgency influence the Luftwaffe and its engineers? Today we're taking a closer look at the remarkable yet tragically unfinished aircraft known as the TA-152. While examining the broader themes of desperation and innovation that are often seen in building warplanes, we'll uncover the reasons why this extraordinary superplane entered combat in less than ideal state. The first reason for the TA-152's rush into combat was the requirement for high-altitude interceptors in 1944. The Allies ramped up their bombing campaigns on German cities and military targets. This is where even the more conventional aircraft like the Focke Wulf 190 and the Bf-109 failed at high altitude. The truth is that there was an imminent need for fighters capable of intercepting the bombers at high altitude. Rumor had it the Americans might soon introduce the Boeing B-29 Superfortress that could veer above the 30,000-foot line. That desperation was the very reason why the TA-152 was regarded as the fighter of very high performance. The theory was the 14-kilometer ceiling would outmatch any same-era fighter planes from the Allies. However, hastening the aircraft into a legacy role resulted in it not being put through all the testing and refinements that would have been routine for a vital mission such as this. As the war was turning against Germany, the engineers of the Luftwaffe were pushed by sheer panic to produce new planes to battle the ever-mounting enemy threats. This sense of panic brought about many exciting design changes and project approvals that might never have happened in normal times. The TA-52 is a spin-off, among other works, on the well-regarded Focke Wulf 190. Saw fantastic speeds from the drawing board to prototype as wartime reality started to press in. A number of aspects of the TA-152 design remained unfinished, and its prototypes received only very limited aerodynamic and mechanical testing. The prototypes of the TA-152 were built with great technical difficulty, would have benefited from longer development phase. Later, in December 1943, the prototype started test flights, but its landing gear arrangement failed during its first flight, rendering difficulty in landing, resulting in irreplaceable damage, and it being written off. Most of the later prototypes soon faced problems with the supercharger. There were fuel pump failures at higher altitudes. The second prototype flew with about 10 hours in the air. However, it crashed owing to a mid-air engine fire. Such continued engineering setbacks proved the aircraft was not operating near the production bolster. Nevertheless, it was being forced into production. In November 1944, by which time matters had become critical, an order was issued for its large-scale production despite still being unable to put its prototype into proper order. Quite astonishingly, when the development was given the go-ahead, the prototypes hadn't even flown for 50 hours. The slapdash decision, opting for numbers instead of performing due diligence on the prototype, squarely fit into a scheme of blunders that would certainly haunt them later. The most important consequence was the rise of machines whose construction entailed missing or poorly functioning systems. In many cases, pilots were confronted with equipment that had never been scrutinized for performance or safety, a blunder escaping the ordinary in combat. A balance of performance and reliability was vital. The rush to produce aircraft upset this balance, whereby very few TA-152s met uncompromising standards required for aerial combat, leaving pilots saddled with lethal equipment. The TA-152, however, was plagued by low-priced compromises that further suppressed its effectiveness. Specifications sounded good on paper: an extended fuselage, a higher aspect ratio, and powerful guns to give it competitive edge in the sky. But beneath the facade lay a series of quietly accepted compromises dictated by the imperative of rapid production. Of all the features anticipated on the TA-152, a double supercharging system most stood out for its design, aimed to provide optimum performance at high and low altitude. But engineers faced insurmountable challenges to realizing that functionality, not the least of which was any kind of structural change needed. This series of modifications led to the aircraft having considerably less performance than it should have been intended for. The operational effectiveness that was supposed to have been provided at high altitude through agility was completely lost on the final product. Given the scant number of aircraft eventually put into production further complicated the Luftwaffe's predicament. With a combination of rushed ethos of manufacture and compromised design specifications, the TA-152 failed to see field performance as conceived. The pressure of wartime demand outweighed the acute emphasis on sound engineering and rigorous testing in terms of delivery, leaving pilots to manage an aircraft that had not received appropriate tuning to meet the exacting standard of aerial combat. In this way, the TA-152 is ironically emblematic of how mismanagement of priorities can yield suboptimal results, illustrating how critical it is to strike a balance between quantity and quality, and especially in the ever-demanding domain of military aviation. Limited production numbers and hurried manufacturing process severely hampered the TA-152's potential impact. By the time it entered service, the production line was already struggling to meet demands of war-torn Germany, with estimates suggesting a mere handful of aircraft were completed, ranging from just a dozen over 100 units. The scarcity of TA-152s in service significantly restricted its influence on air operations, rendering it unable to make a substantial contribution to the Luftwaffe's strategic efforts. The Luftwaffe's production capabilities were further strained by the need to prioritize other designs and support frontline units. As a result, innovative aircraft like the TA-152 rarely received the necessary support to become a mainstream operational plane, ultimately limiting their ability to make a meaningful difference in the war's outcome. This lack of support stifled the development and deployment of new technology, hindering the Luftwaffe's ability to adapt and respond effectively to the changing tides of the conflict. The limited exposure of the TA-152 to real-world combat may in fact be one of the main contributing factors towards the aircraft's unfinished story. With its many advantages on paper, the aircraft could not translate that to actual performance in combat situations. This situation can mostly result from a mismatch between theoretical data and real-world aerial combat. In this particular situation, designers and engineers overlooked several things regarding the in-flight performance factor, and as a result, they're unable to foresee many of the events that complicate the life of pilots. The less time the TA-152 was operational, the more problems were compounded by the fact that pilots did not have enough time available to them to get used to the new aircraft. This enhanced their difficulties at critical mission times. In this regard, because of the operative skill level, a good percentage failed to come along the way into mil-fuel performance level delivery of the TA-152. The armament also became a question mark in the hurried development of the TA-152. Although the design aimed to include a formidable mix of firepower featuring one 30mm and two 20mm cannons, the actual integration of these weapons into the aircraft was not thoroughly tested. With speed being a priority over extensive artillery testing, the final gun mounts and firing mechanisms lacked the refinement that would typically be expected of a new weapon system. This rushed attitude put both pilots and potential targets at risk, as combining high firepower with minimal testing could lead to mechanical failures or ineffective strikes in combat. Historians have observed that by the later stages of the war, the Luftwaffe's strategy transitioned away from developing innovative fighter aircraft such as the TA-152. Instead, the command prioritized addressing the urgent threats posed by Allied forces. Consequently, the focus shifted to immediate survival tactics, rather than dedicating time and resources towards the advancement and improvement of technology. This change in strategy significantly hindered the potential for a thorough refinement of the TA-152, creating doubts regarding its overall effectiveness in combat. As the Luftwaffe grappled with pressing dangers, the opportunities to optimize the aircraft's design and capabilities was lost. The rush to respond to Allies left critical aspects of the aircraft's development unattended. This reactive approach ultimately foreshadowed what could have been a meaningful innovation in air combat, leaving the TA-152's efficacy an enigma shrouded in unfulfilled promise. Without proper development and testing, the aircraft's capabilities could not be fully harnessed, leading to concerns over its operational performance. In essence, the TA-152 stands a clear reminder of the consequences of hasty decisions over thorough deliberation in the face of crisis. Although it had its flaws, the TA-152 is frequently remembered as a bold endeavor to rejuvenate German air power during a pivotal moment in history. Its operational span was limited, and it had a combat career that lasted only a few months, leaving its true potential largely untapped. Accounts of its effectiveness in combat vary widely. While some pilots lauded its impressive performance, others encountered significant handling challenges. The legacy of the TA-152 ultimately serves as a warning about the dangers of design driven by panic and urgency for production amid crisis. As we wrap it up, it becomes clear that the mixture of panic and desperation during World War II led to the creation of some astonishing aircraft designs that were ultimately hampered by their hurried production. The story of the TA-152 isn't just about an aircraft, it's a snapshot of how war can compel rapid innovation.